Story 1. The Shift That Didn't Exist. The first time the intercom said my name, it didn't sound like a glitch or feedback. It sounded like someone standing close to the ceiling speaker, smiling, absolutely certain I would come. I've worked nights long enough to stop flinching at ordinary noises. Warehouses have their own language. The thin pop of cooling metal, the far-off thud of a pallet settling, the soft rattle of a chain that swears it moved on its own. Light behaves differently too. It doesn't fill a place like this. It slices it. Between the aisles it leaves pockets of dark that feel thick, as if the air is heavier there. That night I was alone. I was supposed to be alone. The schedule was printed and taped to the small glass window of the security office, and my name was the only one on the overnight line. No second guard, no forklift crew, no late truck. Just me, a half-drunk cup of vending machine coffee, and the steady, boring reassurance of fluorescent lights. The intercom clicked once, an old relay waking up, and then it spoke. "Hey, you there?" My own name followed, clean and unhurried. "Come to gate 3. For a few seconds, I simply stared at the black speaker grill in the corner of the office ceiling. The intercom system in our building wasn't voice-activated. It wasn't smart. It wasn't even modern. To speak through it, you needed to press the button on the wall panel out on the floor, hold it down, and talk. And the only person with access tonight was me. I got up anyway. Not because I believed the voice belonged to anyone real, but because every job like mine trains you to respond. An alarm could be a false positive until the day it isn't. A call could be a prank until the day it's a fire. I unlocked the office and stepped into the corridor that led to the main floor. The hallway was narrow, painted a tired industrial beige, and it always felt colder than the rest of the building. My footsteps came back to me twice, once from the polished concrete and once from the cinder block walls, like the building was repeating what I did a beat behind. At the end of the corridor, a heavy door opened onto the warehouse proper. I pushed through, and the smell of cardboard and dust met me, familiar enough to be comforting. The lights in the main aisles were on a timer. Half the fixtures were dark to save power, leaving every other row a long strip of shadow. Gate 3 was on the far side, past the loading lanes and the staging area where pallets waited like quiet animals. I started walking, flashlight in one hand, radio on my shoulder, keys at my belt clinking softly with each step. Halfway there, I heard the intercom click again. "Don't take the main aisle," the voice said, closer now, as if it had moved to a different speaker. "Cut through aisle 9. My spine tightened in a way I didn't like. The warehouse had speakers every so often for announcements, and the sound did carry. But this didn't carry. This sounded placed, directed. I stopped beneath a humming fixture and looked up. The speaker was just a speaker, a black circle in a metal plate bolted to a beam. No camera beside it. No sign anyone was near. I brought my radio up and pressed the talk button. "Control to whoever that is. Identify yourself." Static answered. Not the normal soft hiss of an idle channel. This was thicker, like the air in the frequency had turned to wool. "Identify yourself," I said again, keeping my voice even. "This is after hours." The intercom didn't respond. It waited, and then it clicked once more like someone had leaned on the button with a fingernail. "Cut through 9, it repeated. "You don't want to be seen." I should have turned around right then. I should have locked the office and called the police, or my supervisor, or anyone whose job description included dealing with things that aren't on the schedule. But something inside me, something stupid and human, Wanted to prove there was a simple explanation. A prank, a vagrant, a coworker who'd come in early and thought scaring me would be funny. So I moved. Not to aisle 9, not right away, but toward it, slowly, listening. Aisle 9 was one of the darker rows. It ran parallel to the external wall and the loading doors, where the air always felt colder in winter and warmer in summer, as if the building's skin couldn't decide what it wanted to keep out. The boxes there were mostly returned goods and overstock, random shapes, random sizes, some of them wrapped in cloudy plastic that caught the light like damp skin. As I approached the mouth of the aisle, my flashlight beam caught something pale on the concrete. Footprints. Not dust prints. Wet ones. A trail of faint, glossy ovals that reflected the light in a way dry concrete never did. They weren't heavy like a worker's boot tread. They were lighter, narrower, and the stride between them was wrong. Too long in some places, too short in others, like whoever made them changed their gait mid-step. They went into aisle 9. I shone my light deeper. The beam stretched and swallowed itself against stacked boxes. The aisle looked empty. Nothing moved. No shifting shadow, no startled face. Just stillness, and that faint mechanical hum from far-off refrigeration units. Then my radio crackled again. A single burst, and something came through. Not a voice, not words. A sound like a breath being taken too close to the microphone. I didn't realize I was holding my own breath until my chest started to ache. The intercom clicked. "Good," the voice said softly. "Now keep your light down." I lowered my flashlight without thinking. Not off, just angled toward the floor. The beam became a pale ribbon over concrete and the bottom edges of boxes. I stepped into the aisle, and instantly the temperature changed, as if I'd walked through an invisible curtain. The air smelled different too, not cardboard and tape, but something damp, like old basements and rain trapped under wood. My mind threw up quick, rational ideas. A leak, mold, the building's HVAC doing something weird. But the change had been too sudden, too clean. Like crossing a threshold. Another footprint glistened ahead of me. Then another. Then they stopped abruptly beside a pallet of shrink-wrapped returns. Right there, at knee height, a strip of plastic wrap hung loose, torn, fluttering slightly though there was no breeze. I raised my light a fraction and froze. Under the torn plastic, pressed between boxes like it had been stored there on purpose, was a security vest. The kind our facility used for night staff. Lime yellow with reflective silver bands. At first glance, it looked like any other forgotten piece of gear. Then my bean caught the name patch. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone I recognized from the day cruise either. The patch read, Martin. My stomach tightened. I knew the name, but not from any current roster. I'd heard it once when I first started, in the break room, in the tone people use when they think a story has already been told so many times it's turned into a local myth. A guy named Martin. Night shift. Years ago. They said he'd stepped out onto the warehouse floor during an overnight and never clocked out. No dramatic crime scene, no blood, no broken door. Just an empty chair, a half-written incident log, and his security vest found weeks later in a place no one remembered putting it. I told myself, again, that it was a rumor. Warehouses are built on rumors. People work in the dark, and their brains invent shapes. Someone misses a shift, quits without notice, and the story grows teeth. But the vest was real. The name patch was real, and the fabric looked wrong. Too clean in the dimness, too crisp, as if it had been placed there recently. When I leaned in, my flashlight beam shook slightly in my hand, and I noticed the vest wasn't dusty. It was damp. Not soaked, not dripping. Damp like clothes left in a washing machine overnight. The intercom clicked again, and the sound came from the speaker directly above aisle 9. It wasn't loud, but it was close enough that I felt it in my teeth. "Put it on," the voice said. I stood very still. "No," I said, and my voice sounded small in the huge warehouse. "Put it on," it repeated, patient now, like it was speaking to a child who didn't understand the rules. "You're on his route." The rational part of me tried to push forward. People forget vests. People play pranks. Someone could have dug up an old story and left this here. But that explanation required someone else to be present, and nothing about the building felt like it held another person. It felt like it held only me, and something that had been waiting for me to walk into the right aisle. I stepped backward, careful not to trip, and kept my light low. The footprints on the concrete looked darker now, as if they were deepening rather than drying. They didn't lead away. They didn't go farther. They simply existed, a short trail that ended beside the vest, as if whoever wore them had stepped out of the world right there. My radio crackled again. This time it spoke, and the voice was not the intercom voice. It was a voice I recognized instantly, because I'd listened to it at the start of every shift during safety checks. My supervisor's voice, recorded on the voicemail system. "Martin," it said, "you need to respond." I stared at the radio like it had turned into an animal. The name hit my ears with a physical weight. My mouth went dry. The intercom clicked immediately after, like it was pleased with itself. "That's better," the intercom voice said. "Now we can log you correctly." I backed out of aisle 9 in a hurry, but I kept my movements controlled, as if sudden panic would break some fragile agreement. My flashlight beams skated over the floor, and the moment I crossed the threshold at the aisle entrance, the air shifted back to normal. The smell of damp basement vanished. The hum of the building sounded ordinary again. I didn't stop until I reached the open area near the loading lanes, where the ceiling was higher and the lights were brighter. I turned in a slow circle, shining my flashlight across the rows, trying to catch movement. Nothing. Then, very calmly, as if it had all the time in the world, the intercom voice spoke from a speaker behind me. "You're still going to gate 3, it said. "You just took the long way." I snapped around, heart hammering, and began walking toward the gates again, not because I wanted to, but because a part of me felt pulled. Not hypnotized, not possessed, something subtler. Like the building itself had expectations, and it was easier to follow them than resist. Gate 3 was one of the smaller bays. It had a rolling door, a keypad, and a narrow side entrance with a window. When I got there, the rolling door was down. No truck outside, no headlights, just darkness beyond the glass. I approached the side entrance and shone my flashlight through the window. Inside the small vestibule was a clipboard on a metal stand. The clipboard we used for after-hours deliveries, where drivers could sign in and leave paperwork if they arrived early. I hadn't put it there tonight. I hadn't touched it. But there it was, with a pen clipped to it, and a single sheet of paper on top. The paper wasn't a delivery form. It was a schedule. A night schedule, formatted like ours, with the same logo in the corner and the same grid layout. Except the names were wrong. Not wrong as in misspelled. Wrong as in unfamiliar. A list of people I'd never met, and at the bottom, under security, it had my name printed neatly in the slot where it should have been. Only it wasn't my name. It was Martin. My throat closed. I stared at it until my eyes watered. My brain tried to correct it, to force the letters back into what they should be, but they didn't change. The ink sat there stubbornly, as if the page had always been that way. Behind me, somewhere down the loading lanes, a forklift beeped once. The sound was distant, muffled, but it was unmistakable. The warning tone of a reversing forklift. No one was supposed to be there. The warehouse lights flickered. Not a full blackout, just a brief, nauseating dip like a blink. When they steadied again, I noticed something else that made my blood run cold. The footprints. There were wet footprints on the concrete near Gate 3, leading from the darkness outside to the vestibule door. A trail of damp ovals, reflective under my flashlight. They stopped right behind me. I turned slowly, flashlight rising, and aimed at the empty space where the footprints ended. Nothing was there, but the air felt crowded, like standing too close to someone in a line. The intercom clicked, and the voice was low, almost gentle now. "You're late," it said. He was always late. I forced words out through my dry mouth. "I'm not him." Silence. Then the intercom clicked again, as if the building was considering my statement. "You're wearing his shift," it said at last. "You walked his aisle. You answered his call." My radio crackled. A different tone this time. An incoming call tone I hadn't heard in months, because nobody called the security line at this hour. I raised it and looked at the tiny screen. No caller ID. I didn't want to answer. Every instinct screamed not to. But my thumb moved anyway, like it had its own muscle memory. "Security," I said, trying to sound normal. A pause, then a voice, faint and cracked, like a recording played through water. "Is someone finally there?" It was a man's voice. It sounded tired in a way that made my chest hurt. And underneath the exhaustion was relief so sharp it felt like a knife. "Who is this?" I whispered. Another pause, and then, softly, as if afraid the answer would break something, "Martin." My vision tunneled. I gripped the radio hard enough that the plastic creaked. "I'm not Martin," I said again, louder this time, fighting the tremor in my voice. "My name is—" The intercom cut in, harsh and sudden, overriding my words. "Don't tell it that," it said. I froze. The intercom voice had never sounded urgent before. It had been patient, confident. Now it sounded like a warning. On the radio, Martin's voice whispered, "Please, I can't see the doors anymore. I can't find the office. I've been walking." His breath hitched, and for the first time, I heard fear. "I've been walking for a long time." I stared at the vestibule door and the schedule with his name on my slot, and I understood something I didn't want to understand. This wasn't a ghost calling from the past as a spooky novelty. This was a person stuck somewhere adjacent to the warehouse, trapped in the roots and aisles like they were hallways in a maze that didn't obey normal geometry. And the building, or whatever lived in its systems and speakers, was managing the schedule like a ledger, like it needed someone to fill a vacancy. I swallowed hard. "Martin," I said into the radio, "where are you?" A whisper like fabric sliding over concrete. Then, "Aisle 9. My skin prickled. Of course. The cold aisle, the damp smell, the vest. "Listen to me," I said, forcing my voice into a steady cadence. "I'm going to help you, but you have to tell me what happened." The intercom clicked, a soft sound, almost amused. On the radio, Martin breathed,
and I heard the faintest echo behind his voice, like he was speaking in a vast, empty room. "I went to gate 3, he said. "They told me there was a delivery. Nobody was there."
Then the lights. The lights blinked, and I looked at the schedule, and my name wasn't my name anymore. My mouth went numb. It matched. The story had grooves in it, like a track worn into vinyl. "I tried to go back," Martin continued, "but every aisle led to another aisle. The building kept rearranging. The speakers told me to take shortcuts. They said if I followed instructions, I'd get out." His voice tightened. I followed them. I felt the weight of the intercom above us, listening. "What did it ask you to do?" I asked. Martin was quiet for so long I thought he'd dropped the radio. Then he said, barely audible, "It asked me to put the vest on." I looked back toward the warehouse floor, toward aisle 9, somewhere in the dark grid of rows. My stomach twisted. "What happens if you put it on?" I asked. Martin's voice broke. "You stop being on the outside of the schedule." The intercom clicked sharply. "That's enough," it said. The warehouse lights flickered again, longer this time. In that half-second of dimness, I saw something in the vestibule window reflection behind my own face. A shape standing close to me, taller than me, head tilted as if reading over my shoulder. When the light steadied, the reflection showed only me. My heart pounded against my ribs so hard I thought it would bruise from the inside. I backed away from the door, keeping the radio to my ear. "Martin," I whispered, "don't put it on. Do you understand? Whatever you do, don't." The radio exploded into static so loud I flinched. Through the noise, I heard the intercom voice, calmer again, slipping back into that confident tone. "He's not authorized to give you instructions," it said. I pressed the radio button, desperate. "Stop! Leave him alone!" Static. Then Martin's voice, faint as a dying battery. "Someone's coming down the aisle." My blood ran cold. "Martin, listen. Do you see them?" A whisper, then, "No." My throat tightened. "Then run!" The intercom clicked once, just once. "You can't run from your shift," it said softly. In the distance, somewhere on the warehouse floor, the forklift beeped again. This time it was closer. I turned and stared into the rows, my flashlight beam cutting through the half-lit lanes. Far away, between stacks of boxes, a small orange safety light blinked. Slow, steady, like the rotating beacon of a forklift moving through darkness. But the light wasn't rising and falling the way it should with motion. It was sliding sideways, smoothly, at a height no forklift beacon would ever be, as if it belonged to something tall, walking upright and carrying a light as a lure. My hands started to shake. I forced myself to breathe in through my nose, out through my mouth. Panic would make me stupid, and stupidity was what the building wanted. I looked at the schedule on the clipboard again, my eyes locked on the bottom line. Security, Martin. I took the pen with fingers that felt clumsy and numb, and I did the only thing I could think of that might break the pattern. I crossed out Martin. The ink dragged on the paper like it resisted, like it didn't want to be altered. I pressed harder and drew a thick line through the name until it was a black scar. The intercom snapped to life, louder than before. "No," it said. I wrote my real name above the crossed-out one. My handwriting was messy but readable. I underlined it once, then again, as if doubling down would anchor it to reality. The warehouse lights flickered violently. 2, 3 rapid dips. The air pressure changed. My ears popped like I'd gone up a mountain too fast. On the radio, the static thinned. "Hello?" Martin's voice came through, clearer now, startled. I can see the office sign." "Keep going," I said quickly, heart thundering. "Don't stop. Don't listen to the speakers." The intercom clicked, and the voice was different. Not calm now, not patient. Angry. "You don't edit the schedule," it said. The orange beacon in the distance stopped moving. It hovered between aisles, perfectly still. Then it began to drift toward me again, faster, gliding as if the floor offered no friction. I grabbed the clipboard off the stand, ripped the paper free, and stuffed it into my jacket pocket like it was a weapon. Then I turned and ran. Not into the warehouse, but back toward the corridor and the security office. I ran like a man who understood that doors could become suggestions if you gave a building enough time to rewrite them. My footsteps slapped the concrete, loud and humiliating in the wide space. The intercom hissed above me with feedback, a long mechanical scream. Speakers clicked in sequence as I passed them, like something tracking my position, lighting up nodes in a network. "Return to Gate 3, it said from one. "Unauthorized route," said another. "Security must remain on post," said a third, in a voice that was suddenly my supervisor's, recorded and flat. I didn't answer. I ran. I reached the corridor door and yanked it open, bursting into the narrow hallway like it was a lifeboat. Behind me, the warehouse lights flickered once more, and for a second, the huge room went dim. In that moment, I heard, very distinctly, footsteps following. Too close, too fast, and oddly wet, like soles peeling from damp concrete. I slammed the corridor door shut and threw the deadbolt. The handle rattled immediately, as if someone grabbed it on the other side. Then it stopped. Silence pooled in the hallway. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed, steady and indifferent. I forced my trembling hands to work the key and get into the security office. I shut that door too, locked it, and stood with my back against it, breathing hard, listening. My radio hissed quietly now, like normal static. "Hey," Martin said, tentative, as if he didn't trust that he was really being heard. I'm here. I'm in the office." My knees almost gave out. "You're with me?" I whispered. A pause, then, confused. "With you? No, I'm in the office." "But it's not your office." My blood turned to ice. I lifted my eyes and stared at my own security office. The desk, the monitors, the coffee cup, the schedule taped to the window. Everything looked normal. Too normal. "Martin," I said slowly, "tell me what you see." He exhaled shakily. "The desk is there, but it's older. The monitors are smaller. There's a calendar on the wall that says—" He stopped. His voice turned thin. "What year?" I asked, already knowing I didn't want the answer. 2008, he whispered. My mouth went dry. I started to shake again, but colder now, not from adrenaline, from understanding. "Martin," I said carefully, "the year is different here." Silence on the radio. Then, "No," he said like a prayer. No, I just want to go home." The intercom clicked behind me, inside the office ceiling. I hadn't heard it come on. I hadn't heard a relay. It was just suddenly alive, as if it had been there the whole time and I had simply forgotten to notice it. "You did well," it said, almost soothing.
You brought him back to his post. I spun, staring up at the speaker grill in the ceiling tile above my desk. My breath came in shallow bursts. I didn't, I said. He's not here. The intercom clicked again. He's here, it insisted. He's in the office. He's on the schedule. I felt the paper in my pocket like a hot coal. I pulled it out with shaking hands. The page was crumpled, my name scrawled over the printed line, Martin's name crossed out. But as I looked at it, the ink began to bleed. Not like water was spilling on it, like the paper itself was sweating the letters back into place. The thick black line through Martin faded at the edges, thinning. My handwriting softened, as if the fibers were swallowing it. I stared, horrified, and pressed my thumb hard onto my name, trying to smear it into permanence. It didn't smear. It just disappeared under my thumb like it had never been there.
On the radio, Martin made a sound that I will never forget. A small, broken noise that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite laughter. It was the sound of someone realizing the rules had been in place long before they arrived. "It's here," he whispered. "It's in the office with me." The intercom voice above my head spoke with quiet satisfaction. "Now you understand," it said. "A shift doesn't end until it's handed off." The warehouse lights outside the office window flickered, and the corridor beyond the glass seemed to stretch. Not physically, not in a way you could measure, but in a way your brain registers as wrong. The hallway looked longer than it should. The door at the far end looked farther away. And taped to the little glass window, where my schedule should have been, the paper had changed. My name was still on the overnight line, but beneath it, in smaller print, like a note added by someone who owned the building itself, there was a second line. Training. Martin. My radio crackled softly. "Hey," Martin said, and his voice sounded closer now, as if he had stepped nearer to his own radio. Can you see me?" I stared at the dark hallway beyond my office window, and I realized with sinking dread that I could. Not clearly, not fully, but in the reflection, in the smear of fluorescent light on glass, a figure stood behind me where the office should have been empty. A lime yellow vest, reflective stripes, damp fabric clinging to a shape that didn't quite fit the way a human body should. The intercom clicked one last time, gentle as a bedtime story. "Welcome to night shift," it said. "Gate 3 needs you." And the worst part was this. When my hand reached for the doorknob, I couldn't tell whether I was opening it to run, or because a part of me finally, obediently, believed I was scheduled. Story 2. The last room on the 4th floor. The hotel's night clerk slid my key across the counter with a tired smile and said, "If the elevator opens on 4, don't step out." Then he looked past my shoulder, as if someone was already standing behind me, and quietly added, "And if you hear your own voice from the hallway, please don't answer it." I was driving alone through western Pennsylvania, cutting across the state to make a morning appointment I couldn't miss. I'd left too late, the weather turned mean, and by the time I saw the hotel sign it was nearly midnight and raining hard enough to make the highway lights bloom into starbursts. The place looked ordinary from the road, the kind of roadside hotel built to be forgotten. 2 floors in the front, 4 in the back, where the hill dropped away. A parking lot slick with water. A lobby lit too brightly, like it had something to hide. I should have kept driving, but fatigue had already made the lines on the road start to sway, so I pulled in. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something older beneath it.
like damp carpet that never fully dries. A television in the corner played a late-night news rerun with the volume low. The man behind the counter was maybe in his late 50s, thin, with sleeves rolled up and a plastic name tag that read, Leon. His eyes were alert in a way that didn't match his posture. He asked for my ID, swiped my card, and made small talk the way people do when they're trying to keep their voice from shaking. "Passing through?" he asked. "Just for the night," I said. "Long drive." He nodded as if he'd heard that phrase so many times it had become part of the building's wiring. He typed, frowned at his screen, then tried again. The printer behind him clicked and whined. When he finally handed me a key card, his fingers lingered on it for a second too long. "You're in the back building," he said. "Third floor, room 318. "Okay," I said, taking the card. He hesitated, then leaned forward, lowering his voice.
"If you use the elevator and it opens on 4, don't step out." I stared at him, waiting for the smile that would tell me it was a joke. It didn't come. "Is there something wrong with the 4th floor?" I asked. His throat moved as he swallowed. "It's not a floor we rent out. It's closed." "Then why would the elevator—" "It doesn't always." He cut in quickly, then softened his tone as if he'd been rude to a stranger he needed to protect. "It shouldn't, but the building is old and sometimes it does. If it happens, just stay inside and press 3 again." He pushed a small paper card toward me. It had the Wi-Fi password written on it in neat block letters. Under the password, in the same handwriting, was one more line. "Do not knock on 4XX. I felt a faint prickle of irritation. I was exhausted, soaked from the rain, and not in the mood for local law. "All right," I said, folding the card and putting it in my pocket. "Thanks." Leon nodded, and his eyes slid past me toward the lobby doors. For a second, his expression sharpened, like he'd heard something I hadn't. Then he said, very carefully, "And if you hear your own voice from the hallway, don't answer it." My mouth went dry. My own voice? Leon forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Travel makes people hear things. Sleep deprivation, pipes, TV reflections, you know. Just don't answer it." I should have asked more. I should have demanded he explain. But there was a strange pressure in the air, as if the building preferred things unsaid. So I nodded, thanked him again, and walked out through a side door into the rain. The back building was connected by a covered walkway. The concrete was slick and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, attracting moths that threw themselves at the tubes like they were trying to get inside the glow. The elevator was at the far end, a plain metal door set into beige walls. The button panel looked newer than the rest of the hallway, which made it feel even more out of place. I pressed the button, watched the little arrow light up, and waited. When the doors opened, the elevator smelled faintly metallic, like wet coins. I stepped in, pressed 3, and leaned back against the wall with my bag at my feet. The doors closed with a soft sigh. The elevator began to rise. At first, everything felt normal. A gentle lift, the quiet whir of cables. I stared at my reflection in the brushed steel and tried to picture my bed. Hot shower. Sleep. The display above the doors blinked to 2, then 3. The elevator slowed and stopped. The doors opened. And the hallway outside wasn't the 3rd floor. It was darker, the lights spaced farther apart, with long stretches of shadow between them. The carpet was a different color, an old, bruised maroon that looked damp at the edges. The air that drifted in was colder than it should have been, carrying a scent like wet plaster. The display above the doors said 4. For a second, my mind refused it. I stared at the glowing number as if it might change. Then I remembered Leon's face, the way his fingers had clung to the key card, the note. My feet stayed planted inside the elevator. I reached for the button panel and pressed 3 again. Nothing happened. I pressed it harder. Still nothing. A small chime sounded, thin and wrong, like a child's toy. The doors remained open. The hallway waited. Something moved far down the corridor, at the limit of the light. Not a person crossing, not a shadow cast by an object. It was motion without a shape, like darkness shifting in a way it shouldn't. My skin tightened over my bones. I pressed 3 again, then 2, then the close door button. The close door button didn't respond. My heartbeat became loud enough that it seemed to echo in the elevator cab. Then, from the hallway, a voice called, bright and friendly, as if someone had spotted me and wanted to help. "Hey! Are you getting out?" It took my brain a moment to process the voice because it was familiar. Not familiar like I'd heard it on the news. Familiar like I'd heard it in my own skull. It was my voice. Same pitch, same cadence, same slight rasp that comes through when I'm tired. My throat went tight. I didn't answer. The voice in the hallway chuckled softly. "Come on," it said, still in my voice. "It's fine. You're already here." A cold sweat broke across my back. The urge to respond, to argue, to demand to know who was speaking, rose in me like an instinct. In normal life, when you hear your name, you answer. When you hear your own voice, you correct it. But Leon had been specific. Don't answer. So I held my breath and stayed silent. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the voice changed. It was still mine, but the tone shifted, less cheerful, more intimate, like someone whispering through a cracked door. "You can't sleep on 3, it murmured. "Not tonight." I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, forcing myself not to look down the corridor. My fingers found the emergency call button and hovered. My phone had no service. I'd noticed it in the lobby, the signal icon a stubborn, empty outline. At the time, I'd shrugged it off. Now it felt like another lock clicking into place. I opened my eyes again. A figure stood at the edge of the light halfway down the hallway. At first, I thought it was just a person in the wrong place. Someone in a robe, maybe, wandering. But the longer I stared, the less it resolved into anything human. It was too thin in some places and too wide in others, like a silhouette assembled from mistakes. Its face was turned toward me, but where the face should have been, there was only a pale patch, as if the skin had been sanded blank. I couldn't see eyes, yet I knew it was looking directly at me. My voice came again, from somewhere closer now, not from the figure's mouth, but from the hallway itself, the air vibrating with it. "You don't have to be afraid," it said. "You just have to check in." The figure began to move. It didn't walk, it slid forward in small, smooth increments, like a video skipping frames. Each time it shifted, the air in the elevator seemed to grow colder. I finally hit the emergency call button. A harsh buzz sounded. The button lit red. Then the speaker crackled and a voice answered. Not Leon's. Not a dispatcher's. My own voice, again, but duller now, like it was being played through water. "Front desk," it said. "How can we help you?" My stomach dropped. I yanked my finger off the button as if it had burned me. From the hallway, the figure slid closer. The elevator was still refusing every command. The doors stayed open like a mouth held wide. I did the only thing left. I stepped back into the corner of the elevator cab, as far from the threshold as possible, and I stared at the button panel as if sheer attention could force it to obey. My breathing came in short, careful pulls. I tried to think of mechanisms, logic. Maybe the elevator had misleveled. Maybe the panel froze. Maybe if I pressed the lobby button, it would reset. I pressed L. The button lit up. For a heartbeat, nothing changed. Then the doors began to close, slowly, reluctantly, like someone was pulling them shut from the outside. The figure was almost at the elevator now, just a few yards away, moving in those horrible, smooth jumps. As the gap narrowed, I saw something in its blank face, an indentation, a suggestion of features, as if it was trying to remember what a face should look like. And then, right before the doors met, a hand shot out. Not from the figure, from the darkness beside the elevator door, where there should have been only wall. A human hand, pale and trembling, fingers splayed, reaching into the narrowing seam. A mouth appeared in the darkness behind it, just a mouth, as if the rest of the face had been erased. Lips cracked, teeth wet. The mouth whispered my name, in my own voice. The doors clapped shut on the hand, as if it wasn't there. No thud, no crunch, no resistance. The seam sealed smoothly, and the elevator dropped with a sudden lurch that made my stomach float. The display blinked rapidly. 4, 3, 2. Then it stopped at L. The doors opened onto the bright, normal lobby corridor of the back building. The air was warmer. The carpet was the newer beige pattern again. The fluorescent lights buzzed their ordinary buzz, and the world snapped back into the shape I expected. For several seconds I couldn't move. My legs felt far away. My fingers tingled as if I'd been holding onto an electric fence. Finally, I stepped out of the elevator and looked at the hallway. Everything looked normal, but I could still smell that wet plaster smell in my clothes, faint but real. I made myself walk quickly down the covered walkway back to the front lobby, rainwater dripping from my hair. I pushed through the glass doors and saw Leon behind the counter, head bent, writing something. He looked up, saw my face, and the blood drained from his. "It opened on 4, I said, and my voice sounded thin. Leon nodded once, like he'd expected nothing else. "Did you step out?" "No." His shoulders sagged in relief. Then he glanced at the lobby TV, and I realized it was muted now. The screen was showing a security camera feed instead of news. Grainy black and white views of hallways and stairwells. Leon reached under the counter and pulled out a binder. He flipped it open with hands that moved fast from practice. Inside were printed floor plans, old incident reports, and a stack of forms that all had the same header: Guest Contact Log. He slid the binder toward me and tapped a specific page. It was a list of dates, handwritten notes, and check marks. The notes were short, like someone trying not to write too much. 4th floor door opened. Guest answered their own voice. 4th floor door opened. Guest stepped out. 4th floor door opened. Guest did not return. I stared at the last line for too long. Leon cleared his throat quietly. "People think it's a prank," he said, "or a haunted hotel gimmick. It isn't." "What is it?" I asked, and I hated how small the question sounded. Leon's eyes flicked toward the hallway behind me, toward the back building. "It's a mistake in the building," he said slowly. "Like a room that was built wrong, like a hallway that leads somewhere it shouldn't." He leaned forward, lowering his voice.
And it learns voices. It uses them like keys. My skin crawled. "I didn't answer," I said again, as if repeating it could keep me safe. Leon nodded, but his expression didn't relax. "It still heard you," he said. "It heard you breathing. It heard you moving. It knows you're here." I swallowed. "Then what do I do?" Leon reached for my key card. "I'm moving you," he said. "Front building, second floor, stairwell only." He typed quickly, printed a new card, and placed it in front of me. His hands were steady now, but his eyes were not. "Listen," he said. "If you hear a voice in the hall tonight, don't answer. If you hear a knock, don't open. If you hear the elevator bell, don't look." I stared at him. "Why do you stay here?" Leon's mouth tightened. For a moment he looked very old. "Because the last time I tried to quit," he said, "it called me from my own phone, in my own voice, and it said the schedule still had my name." A cold weight settled in my chest. The same pattern as the warehouse, the same sense of a place behaving like a ledger. Leon slid the binder away and looked me dead in the eyes. "And because," he added, "it doesn't like being ignored. It likes being acknowledged." I took the new key card with fingers that didn't feel like mine. As I turned to leave, the lobby phone rang. Leon didn't move. The ringing continued, long and patient. Finally, the answering machine picked up with a click, and a recorded voice filled the quiet lobby. It was Leon's voice, but warped slightly, as if someone had learned it imperfectly. "Front desk," it said. "How can we help you?" Leon's eyes stayed on mine. From the hallway toward the back building, very faintly, an elevator bell chimed. Once. Twice. Then, softly, like a person leaning close to my ear, my own voice whispered from somewhere behind me in the lobby. "Don't go to the second floor," it said. "Your room is ready." I walked out without looking back, holding my breath as if silence could make me invisible, and I took the stairs 2 at a time. Halfway up, I realized something that made my hands go numb. I could hear footsteps above me. Slow, careful footsteps coming down, and whoever was walking was matching my pace perfectly, as if they knew exactly how many steps I had left before the landing. Story 3. The 317 call. The first time the dispatch line rang at 3:17 a.m., it wasn't the sound that scared me. It was the caller ID. It showed my own number. I wasn't supposed to be on call anymore. That part of my life had ended 2 years earlier, after I'd left the county dispatch center and taken a quiet overnight job doing facility security for a private contractor. Less noise, less tragedy, fewer voices that stayed with you when you tried to sleep. But old habits are stitched into the body. When a phone rings in the middle of the night, a part of you wakes up already bracing, already listening for the shape of bad news. That night I'd fallen asleep on my couch with the TV on low, the remote somewhere under a blanket. I remember a commercial, then the screen dimming, then the sudden, sharp ring that snapped my eyes open. My personal phone was on the coffee table, face up. 3:17 a.m., and my own number pulsed on the screen, like a joke with perfect timing. For several seconds I just stared. I'd had spam callers spoof numbers before, but this was too clean, too exact. The same formatting my carrier used. My name in the contact field. Me. I didn't answer. I watched it ring itself out. The moment it stopped, the TV flickered. The picture went grey, then returned, then grey again, as if the signal couldn't decide whether it was allowed to exist.
The sound stayed normal, which somehow made it worse. My phone vibrated again. Same number. 3:17 a.m. It shouldn't have been 3:17 twice, but it was. My eyes checked the clock on the microwave in the kitchen. It also read 3:17, the digits glowing green like they'd been frozen there. I sat up slowly, and the couch springs creaked under my weight. The phone rang. I reached out and flipped it over, as if hiding the screen would make the call less real. The vibration buzzed against the wood table. The ringtone drilled into my skull. Against everything in me, I answered. "Hello?" I said, and my voice came out hoarse, half asleep. Static. A breath. Then a voice that wasn't mine, but sounded like it had borrowed pieces of me. Same cadence, same tired rasp, only with something wrong underneath, like the voice was being pushed through a narrow pipe. "Unit 7, it said. My stomach dropped. Unit 7 was a radio designation from my old dispatch job. Not mine. Mine had been Dispatcher 2. Unit 7 belonged to an officer named Cole, who'd worked nights and drank terrible gas station coffee and always checked in when he cleared a call. I hadn't heard that designation in 2 years. "What is this?" I asked, and the room seemed to tilt slightly, as if my words shifted the air. The voice on the line ignored the question. "Unit 7, respond," it said again, firmer. "We have a signal from the old line." The old line. My throat tightened. The dispatch center had an old line, a direct number once used for a rural substation before they upgraded systems. It had been disconnected long before I left. The only time it ever rang was by accident or, very rarely, when someone misdialed and the ghost of a route still found its way through. "This is not dispatch," I said slowly. "You have the wrong number." A pause, then the voice, softer now, intimate, as if it leaned closer to the microphone. "It's your number," it said. "So it's your shift." My skin prickled from my wrists to my elbows. I sat very still and listened hard for any telltale noises. Call center chatter, background TV, anything that would make this normal. There was nothing. Just a faint hum, like fluorescent lights in a quiet building. And then, very far away on the line, I heard a sound I recognized too well. A radio squawk. Not from my phone. From inside my apartment. I turned my head toward the hallway that led to my bedroom. The door at the end of it was open a crack, just enough for darkness to seep into the living room like ink. My old radio wasn't even here. I'd gotten rid of my dispatch gear when I left. I'd been careful about that, like disposal could be a kind of cleansing. And yet I heard it again. A squawk, then a voice, distorted, clipped by static. 7, copy. It came from the dark hallway. My throat went dry. I kept the phone to my ear with one hand and slowly reached for the lamp switch with the other. The lamp clicked on. Warm light filled the living room, pushing the shadows back, making the apartment look like the harmless place it was supposed to be. The hallway remained dark. Not just unlit. Dark in a heavier way, as if the light couldn't quite touch it. On the phone, the borrowed voice spoke again. "Go to the line," it said. "Answer it properly." I swallowed. "What line?" A faint smile crept into the voice, and that was the first truly inhuman thing about it. You can hear a smile even over a bad connection. "The line you left behind," it said. "The one that still rings." my eyes fixed on the hallway. A tiny part of me expected to see a person step out, a prankster, a burglar, anyone I could deal with. But the darkness stayed empty and intent. Then the hallway radio squawked again, louder. This time the voice that followed was clearer, and my heart stuttered when I recognized it. Cole. Not a recording. Not an impression. Cole's exact voice, with his exact tired impatience. "Dispatch," he said. "You there? I need a check." The hair on my arms lifted. Cole wasn't alive anymore. That's not something I like to say out loud, even now. In dispatch, you learn to carry certain facts carefully, like they're containers full of acid. Cole had died on a winter night, responding to a call on a back road when black ice took his cruiser into a ravine. The radio went silent mid-sentence. We'd listened for him for hours, calling and calling, and the silence had felt like a thing in the room. I'd been the one to take the final message from the trooper who found him. And now Cole's voice was in my hallway. On the phone, the borrowed voice lowered, almost soothing. "He's waiting," it said. "You always hated leaving people waiting." My mouth went numb. "Cole?" I said toward the hallway, because my body reacted before my mind could stop it. The radio responded immediately, like it had been poised for that one syllable. "Yeah," Cole's voice said, relief flooding it. "Yeah, there you are. Listen, I'm at the old substation. Something's wrong with the door. The light's on inside, but it's supposed to be shut down. I saw a movement." My breath came in short pulls. My apartment felt suddenly too small, as if the walls had moved closer. "I'm not dispatch," I whispered, but it sounded like I was saying it to myself. Cole's voice kept going exactly as he would have on a real call, building the story with practical details that made it harder to dismiss. "I checked the lot," he said, "no vehicles, but I hear a phone ringing inside, like a landline, that old number you guys never fully killed." On the phone in my hand, the borrowed voice said quietly, "Tell him to go in." My stomach lurched. "Cole," I said toward the hallway, "don't go in." The borrowed voice on the phone sharpened. "That's not your call," it said. "You don't get to override the schedule." I tightened my grip so hard my knuckles ached. "Why are you doing this?" I asked the phone, keeping my eyes on the hallway like something might step out any second. The voice sounded almost offended. "Doing what?" it asked. "Calling you, scheduling you, keeping the line staffed." A low, cold dread began to unfold in my chest, slow as a bruise. I thought of the warehouse story I'd once heard from a friend who worked nights, about intercoms that called people into aisles. I thought of Leon's hotel binder with its careful check marks, places keeping ledgers, systems refusing to let vacancies remain. My phone screen glowed faintly. The time still read 3:17. It hadn't moved. It wasn't time. It was a position. On the hallway radio, Cole's voice lowered. "Dispatch," he said. "I can hear someone inside. It sounds like you." My blood turned to ice. Cole had heard my voice in that place, wherever it was, the same way the hotel used voices like keys, the same way the warehouse spoke names like assignments. The borrowed voice on my phone softened. "See?" it murmured. "It already knows you. Just do your job." I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. My gaze flicked to the kitchen. There was a drawer with knives. There was a heavy flashlight by the door. But none of that mattered if what I was dealing with didn't follow rules. I took a step toward the hallway. The air changed immediately, cooler, damper, with a faint scent of old paper and overheated plastic, the smell of a busy dispatch room at 3 a.m. when printers have been running and coffee has been sitting too long.
The borrowed voice on the phone sounded pleased. "That's it," it said. "You remember the way." "I'm not going anywhere," I said, though my feet kept moving, one careful step at a time, toward my bedroom. The hallway grew darker with each step, and the darkness wasn't empty. It felt textured, like fog you could push a hand into.
At the end of the hall, my bedroom door was open wider now than I remembered. Beyond it was not my bedroom. Beyond it was the dispatch center. Not exactly as it had been, but close enough to make my vision swim. The long counter with consoles, the glow of multiple monitors, the big wall map, the soft, constant hiss of radio traffic. The smell, paper, coffee, plastic, hit me like a memory turned physical. And sitting at the far console, under the dim light of a desk lamp, was a figure in a headset. From behind, it looked like me. My shoulders locked. I stood in the doorway, unable to step forward, unable to step back, like my joints had been assigned to someone else. The figure at the console swiveled slowly. Its face wasn't wrong in a dramatic way. It was almost right, which was worse. Like a portrait painted from a description. My jawline, but slightly too smooth. My eyes, but too dark. My mouth shaped correctly, but held too still. It looked at me and smiled with a familiarity that made my stomach churn. "Late," it said in my voice. "But you answered. That counts." My phone vibrated again in my hand. Another incoming call. Same number. My own. The figure glanced at it. "You should take that," it said gently. "Unit 7 is waiting." On the radio traffic around us, voices murmured. Some I recognized, some I didn't. Dispatchers, officers, medics. Threads of emergencies that sounded half real and half rehearsed. And above it all, from a speaker in the ceiling, the dispatch supervisor's automated reminder played. The old one we used to hear on long nights. "Please remain at your station. Coverage is required." I hadn't heard that line in 2 years. Yet my body responded like it was training, a reflex, a leash. The figure in my chair lifted a hand, palm up, inviting. "You don't have to be afraid," it said, echoing the hallway voice from the hotel story in my mind, like these places shared scripts. "You just have to check in." I took a shallow breath. "What are you?" I asked. The figure's smile widened a fraction. "Coverage," it said. "Continuity. The part of the system that stays when people leave." I shook my head, fighting the nausea. "That's not a thing." "It is when the line keeps ringing," it replied. "Someone has to answer. Someone has to log it. Someone has to hand off the shift." My phone rang again in my hand, louder now, urgent. The screen still said 317. The figure leaned forward slightly. "If you sit," it said, "it stops bothering you. You can tell yourself you chose it." On the radio, Cole's voice cut through again, sharp with fear now. "Dispatch," he said. "The door just opened." My throat tightened. "Cole, don't." The figure's eyes flicked up, almost amused. "You can't save him," it said. "He's already on the other side of the call." I swallowed hard. My mind raced for anything that wasn't superstition, for any rule, any exploit. Then I remembered something simple from the dispatch days. Systems don't like blanks. If a field is empty, the software demands you fill it. If a slot is vacant, it starts throwing alerts. But if you give it a value, any value, it settles, even if that value is wrong. A ledger hates an empty line more than it hates a false one. The thought landed like a stone. My gaze dropped to the console.
On the screen in front of the figure was a call log window. I could read it faintly, as if the interface wanted me to see. Call received, 317, caller ID, blank. Dispatcher, blank. The cursor blinked in the dispatcher field, waiting. I took another step into the room. The air thickened, the smell stronger, the hum louder. The figure watched me with patient interest. "What happens if I don't?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. The figure's smile didn't change. "Then the line keeps ringing," it said, "and it will ring until someone answers. It prefers you because you already know the job." I looked at the blank field again. My hand lifted as if drawn by gravity.
Then I did something that felt ridiculous in the moment, but desperation makes you creative. I didn't type my name. I typed Leon's. Not because I thought Leon was guilty, because Leon was a person who had rules, who had binders, who had warnings. Leon was someone the system had already tried to claim with schedules and voices. If this thing wanted a name to fill the vacancy, I would give it one that wasn't mine. The letters appeared on the screen, crisp and black. Dispatcher. Leon. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the hum in the room shifted. The radio chatter stuttered, like a record skipping. The figure's eyes narrowed. "That's not," it began. The ceiling speaker crackled, and the supervisor reminder glitched into a new phrase, distorted and angry. "Invalid entry." The figure stood up abruptly, and for the first time its movements looked human enough to be threatening. It stepped toward me, headset cord trailing like a tail. "That's not your authority," it said, and my voice in its mouth sounded like a weapon. My phone rang again, and this time the ringtone was not my normal one. It was the dispatch center ringtone, a sound I hadn't heard in 2 years, yet it snapped some old nerve in my spine. The screen changed. The caller ID now read, "Front desk." My heart lurched. Leon, the hotel clerk. It was impossible, but the system didn't care what was possible. The figure stopped, head tilting, listening as if the ringing offended it. I pressed the accept button with a trembling thumb. "Hello?" I said. On the line, Leon's voice came through, faint, as if he was speaking from a long hallway. "Don't answer your own voice," he said quickly. "Don't write your name where it wants it." My mouth went dry. "Leon?" "Doesn't matter who I am," he replied. "It's trying to keep you on the line. It can't stand an empty shift. You have to break the loop." "How?" I whispered, eyes locked on the figure inches away now. Leon exhaled shakily. "You have to end the call without closing it," he said. "Don't hang up. Don't complete the action. You have to make it unresolved." My mind scrambled. In dispatch software, there was a way to force a call into limbo, flag it, archive it, mark it as duplicate. Not closed, not active. A state the system hated but tolerated. The figure reached toward me, and the air around its hand felt colder, as if the temperature dropped in a small radius. I looked back at the console screen. The call log window had a small option menu. I could see it clearly now, like the interface was offering me a choice. Mark as duplicate, transfer, close. My hands shook as I moved the cursor. The figure's fingers brushed my wrist, and my skin prickled like it had touched static electricity. "Stop," it said softly, and hearing that softness in my own voice nearly made me sick. I clicked, "Mark as duplicable." A confirmation box popped up. "This action cannot be undone." My heart pounded so hard it blurred my vision. I clicked yes.
The screen blinked. The radio chatter cut out, replaced by a thick, heavy silence. The time on my phone jumped forward, suddenly and violently. 3:18 a.m. In the same instant, the dispatch room around me faltered like a mirage. The fluorescent lights flickered. The wall map peeled into shadow. The consoles dimmed. The figure's face seemed to lose definition, like someone erased it in a hurry. It recoiled, and for the first time it looked afraid, not of me as a person, but of the state I'd forced the system into. "Unresolved," it whispered, in my voice that now sounded like it was breaking. No, that's... The room collapsed, not with a crash, but with a sensation like stepping off a curb you didn't see. My stomach dropped, my ears rang, and suddenly I was standing in my bedroom doorway again, staring at my actual bedroom. My bed, my dresser, my laundry basket. The normal mess of a life that had no business touching the dispatch center.
The hallway behind me was just a hallway. Beige walls, carpet, the dim glow from the living room lamp. My phone was in my hand, still connected. And the line, Leon's voice, was faint but relieved.
"Are you still there?"
he asked.
"I'm here,"
I whispered.
"Good,"
Leon said.
"Now don't check the time at 3:17 again. Don't look for the call logs. Don't try to understand it. Just don't give it a clean ending."
The line went dead. I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening. No radio squawks, no hum, no supervisor reminder. Just the soft buzz of my living room lamp and the distant sound of a car passing on the wet street outside. I walked back into the living room and sat on the couch without turning the TV back on. My hands shook for another 10 minutes, then slowly steadied. At 3:21, my phone buzzed with a notification. Missed call. Me. No voicemail. I stared at it until my eyes started to burn. Then I did what Leon had told me to do. I didn't delete it. I didn't call back. I didn't even open the details. I left it unresolved. Because somewhere out there, in the parts of the world that behave like ledgers, a system was still waiting for someone to close the call properly. And I had the sick feeling that if I ever did, if I ever tapped the wrong button, listened to a voicemail, acknowledged it the way it wanted, the time would go back to 3:17, and my number would ring again.